Welcome, everybody. My name's Joey Hinson. I'm the Director of Ops, and I run the business side of TechCrunch. Thank you for joining. So what's going on today? Obviously, we've been through a big shift in the event cycle. At a really high level, event organizers have had to move from offline events to online events very quickly, including us here at TechCrunch. The quick shift has created a lot of questions, obviously, and a little bit of a knowledge gap. So at TechCrunch, given that we had to adapt super quickly, most of our efforts have been focused on Transforming Disrupt, the conference that we're going to lead September 14th through 18th. While we have a good idea of what this online version of our conference is going to look like, because we've done so much research and we've been so involved in this process, we realize that our attendees, our sponsors, and our partners have a ton of questions because much of this is just totally new. So we put together a series of webinars to go through the platforms that we're using. And we're also going to ask the founders of these platforms to provide insight on larger trends and how they've dealt with the sudden shift to online. To that end, I've invited Grip to talk us through various aspects of online networking. They'll go through what they've done to adapt to this new environment, and we'll offer insights in how to use these tools to continue to create value through online events. Before we get started, and knowing that we're going to touch on the next generation of events, as well as how to drive value in online environments with platforms like Grip, please take a moment and drop any additional questions into Slido. And we'll put a link in the Q&A or the chat function here. So I'll just take a moment if you want to enter your questions there. All right. So really quickly, I'd like to introduce Tim and Grip. So Tim, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Grip?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Joey, and thanks for having me, and hello, everyone. So I'm Tim. I'm the founder CEO of Grip. Started the company about 6 years ago now, and we are an AI-powered event engagement solution. So we work a lot with big trade shows, conferences, corporate events, first predominantly in-person events to make sure that the right people meet and they get to interact with each other. But now, of course, in the last couple of months, we've been able to successfully pivot to doing virtual events. So we do quite a lot of those with big organizers that you might know, like Money 2020 and some other brands across the US. Super excited about also working with TechCrunch, of course.
Cool. Well, before you started Grip, you studied business and you worked for a digital design agency. How'd you get involved with events?
Yeah. That's a good question. So when I was a teenager, I started doing business stuff quite young. My dad has a big tulip company. I'm the most Dutch person that you will ever meet. And I was actually traveling around the world really when I was like 16, 17 already, going to all these trade fairs, selling tulips. And so then when I kind of, took the next, I was 20 years old and I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I want to do this for the rest of my life, right? So, I looked at my dad, I was like, okay, I'm not sure yet. And so what I did is I applied for this internship actually at this agency and was able to advance pretty quickly there, speaking at some events, attending lots, going to evening meetups. I was really, I was doing account management, account exec, so I was really trying to meet a lot of new people. And I just found it so difficult, I went to these events, I was like, okay, there's lots of interesting people here, high anticipation. And then at the end of the day or the end of the evening, you're like, I feel that I missed out on some of the most relevant connections. And I think we've all been in that situation. And then on the other hand, I was using an app that I think many of you will know. I was using Tinder. And I was new in London. I was using Tinder. I was like, this is amazing. This works so well. It's a great way to meet people, right? And so, put two and two together. I was like, okay, we need to be able to bring like Tinder for networking and actually launch that in 2015 on TechCrunch. And no, I'm not kidding. And within, we used the LinkedIn API in a way that it had not been used before. And within 2 hours, we had so many people join that I actually closed down our access. So they closed down our access to the LinkedIn API because so many people were using it, connecting with each other, and then establishing LinkedIn connections. And that was not the way that LinkedIn expected their API to be used. So yeah, from there, kind of started focusing more on communities and focusing more on how we could bring people together, not just virtually but also in person. And that's when we started more and more focusing on events and yeah, kind of zoomed in on that. So yeah.
Okay, so I gotta stop you for a minute. So you launched at Disrupt. Tell us a little. Is that right? Is that what I heard?
No. We launched it
Oh.
on the TechCrunch website. So it
Ah,
just when we launched the app,
ah.
I reached out as a young naive person to a TechCrunch reporter in London, and I said,
Mm.
hey, we're launching Tinder for networking. Do you want to cover it? And they were like, yeah, sure. And we built the app in like 2 weeks or something. We literally just put it together. It had 5 screens. It had a login page, a swiping screen, a connections tab, and a logout button. Like that, literally, that's what it was. So yeah.
And who was that person that you reached out at TechCrunch?
Oh, I don't remember who that.
Mm.
Oh no, it's
Mike Butcher.
no, it wasn't Mike. No, it was I know her Twitter handle. Twitter is Rip Terry. What is her name? Natasha. Yeah,
Natasha. Cool.
yeah,
Very cool.
yeah.
That's it.
Just quick it up.
I,
Yeah.
I love that story. I love that story. So it's kind of funny. We talked to Bizzabo a couple of days ago, and they actually launched or came to Startup Alley at the beginning of their journey.
Oh
And
wow.
so 2 out of the 3 technology platforms that we're using were involved with TechCrunch when they were at the beginning of their journey. I think that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so
Yeah.
okay, well that's pretty interesting. So one of the things I'm really interested in, you introduced Grip as an AI powered networking tool.
Yeah.
In particular, you call it your AI concierge. So how did you come up with the idea of building a networking app with AI built in?
Yes. So we started like in 2016, 2017, we started doing some like really, really big technology events, 20 to 25,000 people. And really what I was seeing is that to drive the 2 key concepts that I think are really, really important for events in general, but also for event technology is return on time. So how can we make sure that people have more relevant experiences within an event? And especially for sponsors and exhibitors, return on investment, right? Like how can we make sure that you actually get what you were looking for out of this event? So, and what we were seeing was that people were swiping a lot, and that's great. But what we really want is more connections. So
Mm.
we had to become more intelligent about who we were recommending that you should meet with, and maybe like if I look towards the future, why would you need recommendations, right? Why wouldn't we just be able to create your event schedule for you and just say, okay, you need to go here at 9:30 a.m. Because based on your interests and based on your social media profiles and everything, and we're able to basically create the day for you based on all this data that we have. So that's very much the way that we look towards the future. And well, in order to create the future, you got to start today, right? So really what we've been building is this kind of data lake where we can look at the anonymized data of networking and what types of people are connecting with each other that we can then use to give you intelligent recommendations of who you should meet with, sessions you should attend, and really, create more intelligent experiences on top of that.
Very cool. That's very cool. I mean, in the early days of attending events for myself, I would go to these big events and just be like, what should I be doing right now? There's like, CES. I mean, if I could have that to get me through CES, that would be amazing. So,
Yeah.
so what task does the AI specifically do? That's something I've always been interested in too.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, on the CES example, like the way that we're looking at that is, how can we use, for example, on top of a floor plan, right? You're
Mhm.
standing here, you want to go to that session in an hour. Can we give you recommendations of exhibitors or things that people you should meet on your way there? Like, like stuff like that. That's really what we want to head to. In terms of how we use it today, we generate this kind of set of 10 recommendations at a time. And those are based on the permissions that the organizer sets. So, might be startups against investors or sponsors against attendees and all of this stuff. And then those recommendations are really based on a combination of your profile data and your kind of interactions within the platform.
Hmm. Very interesting. It's cool stuff.
Yeah.
So, really quickly, So we know where you are, and why you got to where you are. So, but the coronavirus, so this has really affected the event industry, and virtual events. It's brought them to the forefront of everybody's mind. So, what sort of changes have you made to Grip to accommodate this shift to the online world?
Yes. So I think like for us, what really the difference that I'm seeing in networking behavior and the change that we've made to the platform are a lot about the kind of instantaneous nature of it. Like Grip is has always been extremely good at recommending you the right people and then setting up meetings for at the event. But there is a kind of like a natural planning phase, and there is a kind of action phase where you're actually having these conversations, right? And I think what we see with virtual is that it's much more closely together. It's a much more real-time effort. So there's a much more what people are maybe networking in order to set up meetings and holding them much closer together, maybe at the same time even, right? And you might have a meeting, and then you go and look for the next one, and you set up that meeting straight away, maybe in 5 or 10 or 15 minutes. So we've made some specific actions towards that end to make it more instant in terms of the experience. And of course, what we've done is build in video call technology so that you can actually have your video call straight through the platform. You get notifications when the other person has joined, similar to what you might have in a Zoom call. So you can rate those meetings. So there is a lot of kind of intelligence built into that meeting experience. And that was, of course, something that we had to build specifically for the virtual event industry.
Yeah. So we've kind of experienced something similar, where when you take all the friction of traveling and all of the logistics, and then also the price friction around other things, people make decisions, they delay the decisions essentially, and they do less planning ahead of time, and then there's a lot of execution that happens right there in the moment. And I think like the need to use video elements in these exchanges, that's one of the biggest changes I've seen. Like even my own behavior, I used to prefer text messages and written communication and those sort of things. And now it's like, especially after an extended period of not having had human communication, it's been super important to engage over video. So that's interesting that you're seeing the same things. So specifically with your product, can you just call out a couple of product features that you've changed since the pandemic began?
Yeah, so we're focused a lot on something new we call speed networking. So we'll show everybody a couple of slides on that. The new Wave product in terms of setting up those one-to-one meetings and doing that in a rapid series. And then in addition to that, of course, focusing a lot on kind of the entire interface. So where previously it was more networking focused, we've now done specific efforts so that you can do more things simultaneously. So more, connections in the sidebar, and then having additional actions kind of on the main stage, like main page of the interface. So just being able to, do more things simultaneously and have a more, virtual event experience has been quite important. Previously, we were more focused on a single thing that you were doing, and now you might be looking at some profiles that are maybe relevant for you, and alongside of that, you might be looking at your connections and new messages that are coming in for those connections. And that's more of the kind of real-time behavior, of course, that we are used to from kind of Facebook, LinkedIn, and those kind of platforms. And we're kind of going in that same direction.
That's interesting. I have my suspicions about the networking platforms, but the other thing that's interesting is, while I think so, engagement is really important in these instances, right? And just looking at a piece of content coming at you, at an event, that's not enough, right? So when we did one event where we used a platform that it was just content and the agenda, and then we did another event where there was chat and there were multiple sessions going on and there were push notifications and all that other sort of stuff. And it really had that feel of an event where you're just like almost about to drop off a cliff because there's so much going on. You're like, when you walk through the hallway of a trade show, there's so much multi-dimensional stimulation that really makes the whole experience exciting. But I think that's what we have to do. It can't just be this flat, sort of linear experience that that we could probably have gotten by with before this whole thing happened. So most of the organizers I talk to think online events will never replace offline events. What do you think?
I tend to agree with them, actually. I think that they fulfill quite different purposes. So the word virtual event kind of gives the idea that it is a physical event gone virtual, right? So I think we talk more about virtual experiences, actually, although I use the word virtual event all the time. But I think about more of them as experiences, and they can substitute each other. So what I'm hearing from a lot of people that have organized virtual events or participated in them as exhibitors or even corporates doing their own ones is that virtual is a top of funnel activity. So it's a marketing activity. It's about reach. It's about establishing conversations, but it's not about taking somebody from an SQL and then building a deeper relationship with them to potentially close a deal. As we all know from sales, it's much more difficult to do that virtually. You can do it, and it definitely works. But I think that's where face-to-face events have a very unique purpose. And so, really, my expectation is that we'll see a lot of virtual experiences happen throughout the year, and we'll see people attending fewer, but much more focused on those live events that they attend. So live events that do succeed will become actually bigger post-COVID, not in the short term, but in the kind of medium to long term. And because people were like, okay, I go to Disrupt and maybe to 2 or 3 other events, but I want to make sure that I meet everybody that I can there. And that's really the experience that I'm looking for. The rest I'll do virtually, and that means that virtual can really help to make sure you're going to meet the right people at Disrupt when you're there in person. And besides that, you can do it virtually.
That's super interesting. And we'll have to sidebar on that afterwards. So let's just turn our attention a little bit from sort of thought leadership and what we think is going to happen next and what you're doing in response to all this to what you're doing for Disrupt, because I think that's interesting. So we're using Grip to power our networking at Disrupt, specifically the program we call Crunch Match. Since you've experienced this and you've developed your platform alongside us, how would you describe Crunch Match?
Yeah, so kind of along the lines that we just discussed as well, I believe that Crunch Match really provides that return on time element. So it's really providing the partners that are here on the call, to make sure that they can really get that return on investment and make sure that they have the right meetings with potential prospects. And that's really what Crunch Match is providing. That making sure that the right people meet. And that's, for me, is extremely important. That's what I'm passionate about. And I believe that's what is a key driver of events in general. And that's what we're going to be providing. And so, yeah, really excited about that.
Yep. Great. Well, can you give us a guided tour since we're all here together?
Cool. Yeah. So I just put some slides together for everybody just to get a little bit of an idea. We'll just go through that and join at any point if you have any questions or want me to add anything more, just tell me. So the experience for Crunch Match will be very networking focused. Of course, we'll be sitting alongside Hopin, which will be providing, of course, the kind of content side of it. And then here we'll really have the networking element. So it's going to be super networking focused, and that's what we do for tons of events across the world. And those recommendations that you'll be getting will be based on our matchmaking engine. So that means that it's going to be super crucial that already in your registration forms in the Reg system, in Visible, that you provide the right contextual information, right? So what products you provide, seniority level, company type, because all of that will be imported from Visible into Grip. And then that is overlaid with your interaction data. So as you interact with the recommendations that we're giving you, or even as you search or filter for things in the attendee list, all of that gets used to constantly improve the recommendations that you're getting. But because it's a multi-agent system, it will also impact who we're showing your profile to. Because we're not optimizing just for you being interested in people, we're optimizing for connections. So really what we're looking for is, okay, is this person that we're recommending you likely not just to be relevant for you, but also likely to be interested in you? Because we want this mutual interest, right? That's the goal. That's the kind of Tinder element of it, the grip of a handshake. So yeah, that's really what we're focused on in that sense. And then you can set up your meetings. It syncs with your calendar, right? So we send out ICS files for your Google Calendar, Outlook, and so forth. We'll let you know when your meeting starts, so you can join it straight away, or of course, join it from the platform. You can share screens. You can get notifications when the other person has joined. So it's a really seamless experience that you're looking at here. In addition to that, besides having your own personal profile, for partners, you'll also have a company profile. And on that company profile, you can really highlight what you provide as a company. So you can embed some videos, highlight different products. So you'll be able to create individual product profiles. And that will really enable you to make sure that you can easily be found, because there will be a product directory as well. And that will all link back to your company profile and all the different representatives. So it's really crucial that you make sure that you have all the different representatives listed there. Make sure that it's easy for them for an attendee to see, okay, what is the relevant person for me to speak to at my company? And that's really going to make sure that you meet the right people. Now, once you have actually made sure that you have some meetings, you'll be able to see all of that in a single overview. So if you're an exhibitor or a partner of TechCrunch, you'll be able to get access to Grip Teams. I like to think that we launched it before Microsoft Teams, but yeah, I get that, there's probably going to be some confusion, but you are all teams in the end. Yeah, you'll be able to see a single calendar of all the meetings that you're having there. And so you can actually also request meetings and accept meetings on behalf of your colleagues. And so this is really powerful, right? So you could assign a single person within your team to actually go out and request meetings on behalf of you and your colleagues. And that's, of course, really, really helpful, because as opposed to everybody having to be signed in a week or 2 weeks before the event, assign it to a single person. They know who should be meeting with whom, different products maybe that you sell or different geographical areas. But that can really streamline the entire process from an exhibitor point of view. And then you also have an inbound lead section. And this will, all the people that have viewed your company profile, your product profiles, or any profiles that are related with your company, all of that will come in here to the inbound lead section. And you'll have all these little tags on it that will showcase exactly who maybe somebody has looked at the profile of. And then you can easily request a meeting with that particular prospect. So we kind of have this entire inbound lead section built into the platform, so that you have a constant stream of prospects that you could be reaching out to for meetings. So yeah, this is only available to partners, this inbound lead section, and we've seen companies generating hundreds, thousands of leads actually from this section alone, and being able to convert them then to meetings.
Awesome.
Cool. And then, yeah, do you want to show? So the last part I can touch upon is really the kind of speed networking that we're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. So, Joey, I don't know if you want to add something to it or sure.
No. You please go.
Yeah. So the speed networking really came from our. It's a little bit of a funny backstory. I was just talking to Joey about it. So we were already looking at this actually pre-COVID. So we were really already thinking about it in a kind of physical event setup. Because as you mentioned, Joey, like you have a lot of people, they show up and it's so overwhelming, right? You don't really know where to start. And the most difficult thing for event organizers, but also for participants, is actually the first year you attend an event. If you come back the second year, it's very likely that you'll come back for a very, very long time. So really what we wanted to do is provide a way that you could walk into a specific area in the event. We could have 200 people walk in there and everybody could go to a page in the app. And we could then automatically set up, let's say, 6 5-minute meetings with other people that are in the room. So we could basically look at your profile, look at all the interaction and all the data that we have and say, all right, these are 6 people that you should meet with at the physical event. And what we basically did in March is we took this virtual. So what we created is the ability to join this kind of speed networking session where you can select out of all the people attending which ones you'd like to meet with. And then we use your preferences in combination with your profile, and we basically calculate a score of every possible combination. So we have a big multi-dimensional matrix of every possible combination of people that could meet each other. And that's how we then create a short schedule of a number of meetings. Can be 2, can be 5, can be 10, that for people to have in rapid succession. So you see a countdown, and then we'll automatically take you to the next one. So yeah, it's a really fun experience. And it's just like an intelligent speed networking experience.
That's amazing. The weird thing for me in these is like when I first saw them, I was like 5 minutes. That's not very long. And then I did a 5 minute one, and I was like, whoa, 5 minutes can be a long time with somebody. Can you set the duration of these things?
Yeah, we can. So I was exactly the same, right? So we made it flexible, so you can actually set them to 10 or 15 as well. And
Mm,
I've done one. We did one series of 10-minute ones, and I was like, okay, this is very long. This is too
yeah,
long.
yeah,
And so, but yeah, yeah, 5 minutes is quite long actually.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's all about chemistry, right? If you set them to like 2 or 3 minutes, and you can tell in the first couple of minutes if you're going to have something to talk about, and then having the ability to extend it if you want. That I think that's interesting. Although there's so many dynamics going on there. It's like, do you do that? Do you not do that? But yeah, no, this is super cool.
I think
Um,
I think they fulfill different purposes, to be honest. Like when you're at a physical event, you have this same thing, right? It's like sometimes you're talking to someone and it's reasonably relevant, but you also know that there is potentially other people to talk to.
yeah,
And you don't want to be, you don't want to be rude. You just want to, you have a great conversation, but then at some point it kind of naturally comes to an ending, right?
yeah,
And this is slightly different, where instead it's just like I like the way that I would use this, right? Is okay, I'm going to have these 6 meetings. And then maybe for 2 of them, I'm like, okay, I want to have a 30-minute meeting with you instead
yeah,
to talk about something in more detail. So it's really an exploration to then go into more detail and a longer meeting afterwards.
yeah. The most horrifying thing is being in the middle of a really great conversation and having the platform just shut you down. It's like the transitions. I think that's something like, there needs to be a big countdown that goes 3, 2, 1, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
you have a very big red countdown now on the
yeah,
platform.
cool. All right.
Cool.
Is there anything else you want to show us on that?
No, those were really the slides that I made for y'all. So
Great.
so that was helpful.
Amazing. So, well, that was great. And we appreciate the guide. So one thing we talked about was you only get 10 suggestions at a time. Can you talk, what's that about?
Yeah, so really it comes first of all from the mobile experience, right? So on mobile, we actually show one profile at a time, and then you say yes or no to them in the kind of, Tinder style experience. And so for a matchmaking engine like ours, really what we do is we use a whole bunch of different strategies in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a kind of, like a multi-arm bandit is what it's called, the technical term for it. It's basically just an octopus with a lot of slot machines.
Mm-hmm.
And that determines kind of what strategies are used in order to give you those 10 recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And what we then do is, of course, you interact with those, right? Some you request a meeting with, some you skip. And then we use that in real time to give you the next recommendations. So every action that you take is therefore used for the next batch of recommendations. So we could providing you a longer list, but then we really lose that interaction element. And so really that's what we want, right? We want to make sure that you interact with these recommendations so that we can make them better. And then of course, like we can do a lot of calculations in the background of what actually makes these recommendations good. Is it maybe the company type of someone, or is it the seniority level, or is it where they're based? So we can look at these different factors that are on your profile that determine what you're interested in and what you're not interested in. So that's
Yeah. That's great. A couple of the other platforms I've seen, there's just like this infinite feed, and it's kind of confusing. You're like, okay, so this is supposed to limit my universe of things, but it's actually giving me the same universe just in some order. And so I think it's good. We could probably even do with less, to be honest with you. So any great, so hold on, we're having a good conversation here. So what about sponsors? What's so great about this virtual networking platform for them?
Well, I think that we touched upon it a little bit in the presentation, those slides, to be honest. I think that as a sponsor, I'd try to think for myself, I would want the ability to assign a single person that goes into a system like this, sets up all the meetings so that I, as the CEO, can show up on the day, and I have a series of meetings booked with some great people that I can then have a conversation with. And that's all it takes. As long as I make sure that those conversations are relevant, easy to join, and took minimal time to set up, I think that's really the experience that you're looking for. And then in addition to that, if I can participate in some great content and do these other things around it, then I have a great experience. And then TechCrunch has provided me a lot of value. And as a partner, I know that I have some great leads that I can then, potentially do some business with. So, I think it's just back to basics, right? It's like you want to provide these key elements that drive the success of a company. Okay, we put our brand out there. That's great. So brand awareness. And then how do I convert that into conversations that after the event, I can actually follow up with and result in potential business opportunities.
Yep. There was one thing you were telling me about. I think it was product profiles. I don't think, do you think we've gone into enough depth around that? I think that's a pretty interesting feature for sponsors.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's definitely worth mentioning. So as opposed to just only having a company profile, you'll also be able to create, depending on what we set up, a number, maybe 5 product profiles. And this can be used to, many companies will provide a suite of different products that they offer. And that's really what you can do here. You can add a video to it, some links, make sure that there's maybe, you'll have the different representatives that are linked to this individual product profile. And I think that's going to really enable you to make sure that when we have a product list within the Crunchmatch platform, that as an attendee, when I'm filtering on, okay, I'm interested in audience engagement, boom, it will only show me the products that are there, and then that's linked to the individual companies and their representatives. So we really want to make that quite interactive. So it's a little bit of a directory of different things that you as partners offer during Crunchmatch.
I think that's great. Linking a product to a profile and, having super valuable conversations where there's a real, interest on both sides and something to be gained on both sides. That's really at the heart of B2B networking, and solving that problem so that, if you want to have a social conversation, you could do that. But if you also want to have like a really focused business conversation, you can do that. And that's what you're there for, obviously. But, having that access to like product profile conversation, I think, there's a ton of value there. And it's been one of those places where, in the event business, in personal event, in offline events, it can be a little bit difficult to navigate getting those things together. So do you have any good sponsor stories? Just, you told me one ahead of time. I'd love to hear that. I think everybody would love to hear it.
Yeah. So we have of course you have all the tech events and that's great. And of course they sell their tech products and so do we, that's good fun. But actually we had one client and they told me that they've been doing a kind of virtual event series for one of their exhibitors. Yep. And their exhibitor sells fire trucks. And fire trucks also need to get bought and sold. This is very, very normal business. So what they've been doing is they've been creating a virtual event platform where they can tell them about the great fire trucks that they sell. And they've had thousands of potential prospects join this. And they've been selling a very solid number of beautiful red American fire trucks, which is just, amazing. I mean, that can also be done virtually, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, we'll talk about a targeted audience. I can't even imagine trying to sell fire trucks. Anyway, so off the we'll leave that conversation there. Thank you very much. There's one last question, and I had a couple others prepared, but I think we'll leave it here. So these first meetings can be awkward, and do you have any recommendations for like how to make these first interactions easier based on your experience in the networking world?
I think that everybody's just looking for a good conversation, to be honest. So I think it's about being genuine, being honest, saying what you're interested in, what you're looking for, asking questions. I think active listening is extremely important so that you're actually, trying to understand where somebody's coming from, what somebody's looking to do. And when you show genuine interest and you just try to go in with the mindset of, okay, I really want to help, let me see how I can help this person. I think that's a really great starting point. And then you'll have better conversations, you'll have more fun. And then in most cases, there will also end up being some business opportunities associated with that. So I think it's really starting with an open mind. If you start a conversation with like, okay, I really want to sell, then most of the time you don't end up selling anything. So yeah, I think it's about first really trying to understand the person you're speaking with, where they're coming from, what is their backstory. And that's a lot to do in 5 minutes when it's a short meeting, but I think you can really, it's taking a moment to pause and really genuinely say, I'm connecting with you, I'm here. And then kind of going from there is generally what works well for me, but everybody's different, of course.
Yep. So, well, let's move on over to questions because there's actually quite a few of them. So one is directed at TechCrunch. So why did TechCrunch choose to provide networking through Grip out of all the apps out there? Well, out of all the apps that we saw, the way that they provide AI-based matches, that was really important to us. We wanted some sort of intelligence behind that. And then also, out of all the platforms, when we were looking to transition to virtual, Tim's solution was sort of the one that fit in best. We were already planning to move forward with Grip for Disrupt when it was going to be live, but then we did a really quick step back and we were looking at the tech stack that we were building, or not tech stack, but the platforms that we needed, and it fit into all the other pieces that we were putting together. So that's really what it's about. There's not much more to it than that. There are obviously endless options out there, but this is what we did. So, and then there was another one aimed at me. There's two more aimed at me or TechCrunch. Will there be any portions of Disrupt that won't translate to a virtual event? That's a good question. So we boiled TechCrunch down into a few things. There's the content that we put on. So we have stages. We've been able to replicate all of that and even enhance some of it. Our breakout sessions, yes, we're going to be able to do that. We have two different kinds of networking that are going. So Grip is going to provide these really curated matches, but then there's also a kind of random networking feature that's built into the conference. So that place where you walk out into the hall and there's lots of noise and you bump into somebody and you have a 5-minute conversation, there's something like that. But the je ne sais quoi of like the noise that you hear in the exhibit hall and all that sort of stuff, that's the biggest missing thing to me. And I think there's a real like opportunity for somebody to provide an overarching audio layer for these things, just so it's like noisy. And then the next one. So what the heck is ExtraCrunch? So ExtraCrunch is a platform that TechCrunch originally conceived of as a way for investors to meet startups. And that's really still at the core of this product. We want to take an investor with a particular thesis and find startups with particular products and founders and help them come together in a meaningful way so that the startups can get, their first check or ongoing investment, those kind of things. That was what is at the heart of it. But it also evolved to this piece where, we have a lot of different interested people at Disrupt. And it can be a little bit like walking into CES, like which direction do you go in? So as we grew, it became super apparent that we needed to provide a way for people to figure out who they should be talking to and why. So that's what ExtraCrunch is set up to do. And this one's for you, Tim. Does Grip provide networking or roundtable functionality?
So currently, I think that the only thing that we're doing with CrunchMatch is really the one-to-one calls. I think that the kind of group, more roundtable discussions, I think are happening somewhere else. But Joey, maybe you can add more information to
that. We don't really have, well, they're happening in our sessions, in our breakout sessions, really, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. And then this one's another one for you. What differentiates your product from the matchmaking features you see on enterprise app technologies such as SpotMe and EventBase via RainFocus?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, for example, Eventbase is actually a partner, like somebody that we partner with on some events as well. So they have a great mobile app, and I think that we provide a kind of an additional networking layer to that. So I think that we are really we're a platform that's very much focused on the networking, and so whether it's happening alongside a virtual event, kind of content platform, or as part of a live event where you maybe have a mobile app and we can do that ourselves as well, but we also get plugged into existing mobile apps. And then again, I think it's a similar case with something like a SpotMe or some of these other solutions that you see out there. They do generally do a good job, but I think it's more about like how much focus as an interface do you have on something. Like you always need to take some concessions of like what do you focus on. And I think we have to generally focus more on the networking element to really make sure that that's where we stand out. And that's really the point solution that we have there. And yeah, especially on the exhibitor side with like the inbound leads, the shared calendar view, all of those functionalities are extremely powerful that we see that exhibitors really enjoy and organizers really appreciate that we provide those.
Great. So here's another one, and I'm not really sure. Maybe you have a point of view on this. So the question was, does GRIP have a place in healthcare? And I guess this is really like, there's a lot of different dimensions you could think about this. I suppose the question is like, how would GRIP function in healthcare as opposed to in the event environment? I don't know if you have an answer to that one.
Well, I mean, we do one of the, about a month ago, we did one of the largest virtual healthcare events in the world called Omnia Health, which was very, very big, tens of thousands of people. We've done some other big association events in the medical space. So there is definitely a place in kind of like an event context. Beyond that, I think that there are so many great B2B marketplaces, and I think especially healthcare is such an interesting sector where I'm sure there will be great B2B marketplaces to be built. I'm not necessarily sure if we are the right one to go really into, a particular industry to that. Our industry is really the more general connecting of professionals when they are together in a community like TechCrunch.
So another one. So do the GRIP meeting appointments sync integrate with the attendees' digital platform session schedule? I'll take a stab at this one. So GRIP syncs with your Google Calendar, yeah, and you can add content sessions to your Google Calendar. So I think really what we've tried to achieve is instead of having a calendar on some platform that's outside of your normal everyday calendar, we try to integrate all of those things into what you would use, Google Calendar, Outlook, whatever it is. So, but do you have a different answer to that?
No, I agree. Yeah. No, it's definitely the goal is to make sure that somebody has, I think especially for virtual, somebody has this as like it's a full week event, right? I don't think we expect to be online on either like on Disrupt all week. So they're going to jump in and out. And that means that people live by their calendar in half an hour blocks. So we want to make sure that we fit into that schedule.
Yeah, I remember when this whole event technology thing started, and it was like, you got to use this calendar or this agenda or whatever. And then I can't remember who did it first, but the minute it was like, add to your Google Calendar, I was like, yes, everybody should do this now, because really that's what I run my life on. And if it's on my Google Calendar, I do it. If it's not, I don't. So, yeah. Another question, this is squarely for you, Tim. Is big data needed for GRIP to work as a matchmaking tool?
It's a good question. So no, it's not necessarily needed, but it makes it better. I think that's the right answer to that. We run events where there is no data and there is 100 people, so there is no big data. And those, they're still very happy with using the platform. And there's still a lot of value in kind of the managing of the event in general and knowing who to meet and making sure you can pre-schedule all of that and so forth. So you don't need big data in order to use a platform like GRIP, but it definitely does help and it makes it a lot better.
So the next one, I'd love to hear your take on this. This is a very open-ended question. What is the biggest challenge of networking virtually?
Um, I think that so compared to physical events provide something unique in the sense of permission. You know, there is no, like, can you imagine like somewhere in the street, you walk up to someone and say like, "Hey, what brings you here?" I mean, you can do that at an event. You can just be like, "Hey, what brings you here?" And you can start a conversation. Um, that's one element. That is, you know, how do you replicate that in a virtual setting? The other element is that is very difficult to replicate is that you see somebody that you know at a distance, right? So you might be walking at an event. There's somebody that you might have seen there last year, or you might have seen them a couple of years ago. And you're like, "Hey, I know you," and you start a conversation because you have eye contact for a moment, and you kind of start from there. And this actually happens a lot. This kind of transitivity and kind of these kind of like three-way conversations where you're being pulled into something. There's two people talking. You know, one of them is like, "Hey, come and join us." And replicating that, I think that, you know, I've got some ideas around it, but there is still a lot of work to do around it. And that's the biggest challenge. But I think that there is a lot possible there. And I think that, you know, this COVID has opened up so many opportunities in that sense. And there are so many people looking at this now that we're going to see some great stuff happening in this space.
I would agree with that. So this one's a TechCrunch question. So will TechCrunch continue to do virtual events once it's no longer a requirement to social distance? So my experience with virtual events has been pretty good. And I would say, yes, we'll keep doing virtual events. We'll also do online events, and we'll use virtual events in cases where, you know, we don't have the bandwidth to go to Singapore, or we don't have the bandwidth to go to, you know, some interesting emerging startup hub, but we have a lot of people that want to have a closer relationship with our editorial team or you know, our startup competition. So I think we'll actually just expand our event schedule to incorporate these things. We won't do one or the other. And then there's always the question of hybrid events. You know, we're looking deeply into that too. That's actually probably one of the weirdest things to work out. So how will lead gen work as an exhibitor? That's another question for you. How do you get your contact information across?
Yeah, so currently we are actually much more we're focused very much on the chat around that. So when you are in a conversation with someone, you just have the chat, and then you can just, you know, put your details in there. We don't have a kind of like formal, and the chat will stay open, right, post event. So even after the conversation closes, the chat is still there, and you can go back and harvest that. We are looking at some ways that we can do that more formally, but currently that's really the way that you share contact details. Being based in Europe, GDPR is a big thing. So, you know, there is some limitations on, you know, what constitutes a moment where you can actually start sharing contact details. I mean, you know, putting your email address into the chat is definitely the way that it's definitely allowed. So that's really what we're focused on at the moment. I mean, of course, we'll see further iterations of that in the coming months. I'm not sure yet if we'll have something by Disrupt. I don't think so.
Yeah. Let's see, is the value of an event? So somebody asked, is the value of a digital event sponsorship equal to that of an in-person sponsorship? My answer to that is yes, but they're not the same. So we redesigned all of our sponsorship opportunities to include a lot of lead gen opportunities. That's super important to us. And they're not just lead gen opportunities, we're able to target those moments a lot better in the virtual environment. So if you can imagine, you know, in an event, you might have a larger body of contact information after the event, but you'd have to sift through it and work it out. We're able to do the filtering and all that sort of stuff in real time. And then I think there's a lot of really powerful branding elements in the virtual environment too. Like there's content integrations. There are content integrations with our stages. There's the ability to conduct sessions. And then another thing that we've done is we're taking the content and we're packaging it up and we're putting it on techcrunch.com in a way that it lives beyond the conference. We didn't do as much of that in the past. So I think you get more value because that you get more targeted leads. The branding is powerful because it's happening in video streams and all that other sort of stuff. And then your presence is living a lot longer than it was before online. So those are sort of my key takeaways. I don't really think they're the same thing, online and offline sponsorships. But I think we're able to generate as much value in this environment. So will we do more events now that we've moved into the virtual space? Probably. And then that's not really a question for us. I'm scrolling through.
Yeah.
What's been, so I'll ask you this question. I think it's a question aimed at both of us. What's been the most successful event to date and why in this environment?
Interesting. So we've had some events where we've really seen very, not necessarily in terms of like size, in terms of people, but we've seen some smaller events with 300-400 people where we've literally seen like 15-20 meetings per individual. And to me, that's success, right? Extremely high return on time, and extremely high value per attendee. And since we also, people also rate meetings inside the platform, we've seen very high positive ratings in some of those cases as well, like 90% rated positively. So yeah, low no-show rate, high positive ratings, and extremely high value per attendee. So I think that's been, a case where I was like, okay, yeah, this can really work. Like to your point, it's different than in person, but it can be extremely valuable, and there's great potential for it.
Yep. So for us, in the virtual world, our most successful event so far has been early stage. It was a 2-day event, and it wasn't like our big flagship event. It was focused on founders that were looking for seed level or Series A funding, and it was a series of how-to. And the engagement, to your point, was super high. Like we would have a certain number of people register for a breakout, and then we would have more show up. Not the other way around. It's like usually you have some level of attrition, and it was like they were oversubscribed, and I think it was very focused content. So I think that was one of our more successful virtual endeavors so far. Another one, will CrunchMatch be open 24 hours during Disrupt? How does it stay open after the event ends? So yes, CrunchMatch will be open before and during the event, and you'll be able to interact with the platform over 24 hours. And then another one, can CrunchMatch meetings be scheduled outside show hours? Yes is the answer to that. How does a sponsor properly use Grip to generate the most meetings and best interactions? That's a big question. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, I think we've covered some of it, right? Yep. So I think it's about being prepared. So getting into the platform early, setting up all the profiles correctly of you and your team members, your company, your products, and adding a lot of context. So for when you reach out to people. So don't copy paste the same meeting request message to 50 people, make it personal. People actually read it. So try and understand what somebody's coming from, do a little bit of research, and make sure that when you reach out, you actually provide context, right? I would approach it more like a good cold email, not a cold email, but actually where you've put some thought into this, like, okay, I'm going to reach out to this person because of X, Y, and Z, not because they were recommended to me solely, right? There needs to be some context to it. I think that's really, really important. That's what we see is having the best success.
Yeah. So another one, and I think this is aimed at me or TechCrunch. How do you anticipate maintaining attendee interest engagement over the course of a 5-day event? That is a great question. So what we've done is we've shortened the day from an 8-hour day to a 4.5-hour day. So that's initially, if you went to Disrupt in person, it would be a 3-day endeavor, and you would do 6 to 8 hours of content during the day, plus the expo hall. And then at night we would have, a variety of activities. But we realized that people can't sit at their computers for that long and watch content. So So we've shortened it to 4.5 hour days. And then we've also integrated networking moments where we're going to direct people to go and take part in various networking moments during our agenda during the day. So it's not going to be all content all the time. And then the interface itself is very rich. There's going to be a chat stream moving where you'll be able to tap into conversations alongside the different content moments. And then you'll be able to go over to CrunchMatch and meet people and have meetings. And then there'll also be push notifications and all these other sort of things to help you find what you're looking for. So our push notifications, if you say you're interested in AI or you're interested in mobility, we'll only send you push notifications for our mobility sessions or our AI sessions. So we'll let you know when content is happening that you're interested in. So variety and a lot of motion on the platform, but motion that's aimed and personalized towards you. And then also at the end of the day, we don't expect somebody to be there all 4.5 hours for 5 days. You can pick and choose. And I think that's actually one of the great things about doing Disrupt This Way. You know, you can do whatever you're doing, do your job, you can be with your family, and then you can plan to drop in on a session that's interesting to you, or you can take that planned meeting or whatever. So that's how we're going to keep everybody engaged over 5 days. And then this last one, Tim, is for you. Do you think an AI-powered language translator would be available in GRIP in the near future?
We have been looking at it, yeah, because we do a lot of international events. We do, we support 9 different languages at the moment. And so, yeah, it is an important topic. I don't think we'll do it, let's say, in the coming 6 months. Beyond that, to be honest, I don't know. I think that, for the majority of the business world, English is the predominant language. And I think that in general, we're seeing that works well. There are some continental European countries where that's different. Currently I don't see it as a high priority, but who knows? No one knows how globalized the world becomes, right? Like we're seeing a lot of events where there's big delegations from China that might have an impact. If I was one language that I would do it for, it would be Mandarin Chinese to English and figuring out if we can help that.
Yeah, the top 3, English, Mandarin, Spanish, very important languages. I would love to see everything and everything, but you do have to pick and choose your battles, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's the end of our questions. Tim, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy, but we certainly appreciate it. And this has been a great conversation, and I look forward to more.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you, Tim. Yep. Talk to you soon. Yep. Bye.